Hi, my name is Dan Zeilinger, and I have been a world-traveling full-time trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of my most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials across the world. I've met many people during my career and have spent many hours on stage and off with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on the weekends with friends. I think they all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, I'll be sharing them with you. Hi there, this is Dan Zeilinger with Trad Jazz Today, and my next guest, although you may not know him if you're just strictly a classic jazz fan, but he plays much more traditional music than many of us do in other organizations he's been in. That's my good friend, studio musician extraordinaire, wonderful brass player. I'm not going to say trombone because he plays all of it very well, Mr. Les Benedict. Hello, Les.
Hi, it's nice to see you, Dan.
You too, sir. You know, I can't believe that we actually have subbed for each other. You know, I did some research on you, and my God, look at that CV of yours, that resume.
Well, it's kind of scary looking back on it. You know, I've had a good ride. I've had a really nice career when I look back.
Well, you're still writing, I believe. I mean, you know, well,
Yeah,
none of us are at the moment, but that's okay.
not at the moment. It knocked out my regular Sunday night trad gig with Dr. Woody James, which I really enjoy. So, looking forward to when I can get back to that.
Well, I mean, you're such a. It's funny when you sent me the communication saying that you're not the best world-renowned jazz player, a trad jazz player, and which of course is ridiculous for me. But speaking of which, I interviewed Flip Oakes earlier this week.
Oh, nice.
And he says to say hello, and of course he considers you in high esteem.
Oh, Flip is so wonderful. He's such a wonderful musician and such a wonderful person, and it's been a joy and a pleasure and an honor to have him ask me to work with him on a number of occasions.
Yeah, he's crazy talented, obviously. But between you and Flip and Tom Kubas, there's not a whole lot of real meat, the substance there. You know what I'm talking?
Yeah, well, there's that.
The hacks. And of course, Ryan's not too bad on piano either. But
yeah.
Well, let's start at the beginning here, sir. Where were you born?
I was born in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. A lot of people don't know where that is. It is best known for being the home of, or one of the homes of the Manhattan Project.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The project that built the atomic bomb that ended World War II. My dad was a scientist that worked on the Manhattan Project, and we moved there. My dad moved there in 1943, moved the family there, and I was born in 1944 in Oak Ridge Hospital. My dad was a really interesting guy. He was raised on a farm, ran away from home when he was 12. When it was time for him to he was raised by his aunts and uncles, and when it was time for him to go to college, he found that one of his aunts discovered that his father had left him money to go to college, which was being held by his grandfather. So they had to talk his grandfather out of the money so he could go to school, and he went to Tennessee Tech, got a degree in math, taught school for a few years, including teaching U.S. Army Air Corps cadets at Tennessee Tech. He taught physics, and he heard of the government hiring people in a place called Oak Ridge. Nobody knew where it was, so he got in the car and drove around until he found it, got hired, and worked there for a quarter of a century.
So where is it? To some place that we could all identify?
Yes, it's about 20 miles from Knoxville, home in Tennessee.
Now, you know, that's interesting, just from the fact that a lot of these jazz people that I've been interviewing, high tech and extreme intelligence and mathematics has been like a running thread through almost all of them, except for me.
That's really, well, it's really interesting that you should say that, because I need to speak of my father a little bit more. When he was in college, he made a name in a number of ways. He won the math medal for having the highest math average grades for 4 years. that was after majoring in engineering for 3 years and then changing his major to math. He was a cheerleader, and he lettered. They gave him a letter about 50 years later, but he lettered in cheerleading. He played cymbals in the marching band. He was Captain Corcoran in the HMS Pinafore production while he was in school. He was a wonderful amateur musician. He played a little keyboards and a little guitar, but his forte was his voice. And he ended up founding the local barbershop chorus, which he conducted. And he had his own barbershop quartet, which he led. And he was a church choir director. And of course, he led me into music. There wasn't any kind of school music program, school-sponsored music program, where we moved to from Oak Ridge to Kingston, which was a small town of about 1,000 people. So my dad organized some parents and did some fundraisers, and they founded the school band program. Hired a band director, and the school board took it over the next year, and now it's a nationally known award-winning school band program.
Wow, what a Renaissance man, huh?
So he got the big, he was a Renaissance man. He started the school band. My mom worked for, I believe it was Senator Al Gore Sr.'s re-election campaign. She worked for him for 3 days for $5 a day to buy my first trombone for $15.
What brand was it?
Oh, who knows?
I thought I asked Flip the same question because I would think of anybody, something he'd remember, but he got his first cornet when he was 6 years old, and he didn't know it either. So
I have no idea what it was. It was very used. It was all tarnished and whatever, but it played. And then that was starting fifth grade.
So you started on cornet?
I started on trombone.
Oh, okay.
And then when I started sixth grade, after I'd been playing for a year, they decided, or the band director told them or whatever, that I had some talent for it. So they bought me a new horn, and that was a Holden. I do remember that. And I played that all the way up to junior in high school.
Cool. Who was your first trombone teacher?
I didn't have a trombone teacher until the summer between my junior and senior years in high school. And he was a neighboring junior high band director named John Dameron. And I took lessons with him over the summer. I found out years later, a mutual friend told me that he had been Henry Fillmore's first trombone player.
Wow. There's a name that doesn't get enough press.
No, it doesn't. Henry Fillmore wrote some wonderful marches. I think he was a wonderful orchestrator. He had great ideas.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. Okay, so we're in high school now, and you're playing solely trombone in high school? Because I know you've branched off and you play every brass instrument now.
Summer band, one summer, probably after my junior year, I decided it would be fun to play sousaphone in summer band. So that's where that started. And then I played clarinet in summer band one year, I remember. And clarinet. I love clarinet.
Yeah, see, I started, when I went through woodwinds, I started with flute, and that was a big mistake. Because that register key on the clarinet just throws you for a loop if you start the other way around.
Oh, right. Well, one of my fond memories, one of my earlier memories of trad jazz was my dad bought, I think it was the best of the Incredible Dukes of Dixieland or something like that. And whoever the clarinet player was on some of those tracks, may have been Pete Fountain, had the most wonderful sound and technique in the low register that just blew me away. I loved listening to that, and I just wore that record out.
Yeah, interesting. Now, although my show is called Trad Jazz Today, it's not really about trad jazz necessarily. It's kind of politically incorrect nowadays to use the term Dixieland.
Right.
And I'm just interviewing people that I have brushed with greatness. A lot of people who have played trad jazz in the past, like I'm going to be interviewing Eric Marienthal soon, who actually started out with the Al Hirt Band when he got out of college.
I didn't know that. A
lot of people don't, and you're another good example of somebody who's done their time in the Dixieland trenches and theme park trenches that a lot of people don't understand your connection to early jazz, but you have connections that go way earlier than early jazz, of course. We can get to in a minute here.
No, my earliest memory of hearing what we called Dixieland was probably my dad bought a best of, I guess he was fond of those, Tommy Dorsey. And there was a breakdown band that played Royal Garden Blues on that recording. And I loved that. I just wore that out. And then another early memory I have is summer band camp, probably 8th grade or so, when we played a concert band arrangement that featured a medley of trad jazz tunes, Dixieland tunes. And I used to remember what they were. But
yeah, compilations were a big thing in the late 50s, early 60s. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know that a lot of my exposure to early jazz originally came from like the Jackie Gleason Presents series, where he took credit for a lot of stuff.
Of course. Well, you know, I would love to have, we watched Jackie Gleason. I would love to have watched, as I found out later, I would love to have watched Lawrence Welk, because I found out much later that there was some great jazz on that show.
Well, Bob Havens and the guys, you know.
Bob Havens. Bob's going to be featured on another Zoom meeting that I'll be attending later today.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I played on an album with him. He did a big band album at Dick Hamilton's studio that I was honored to play on. But my folks, for some reason, didn't like Lawrence Welk. They watched Steve Allen instead.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Who wasn't really a musician, but he sure played at a lot of instruments.
And played at a lot of instruments. He played at piano. He played at clarinet, I think. But he wrote a song every day.
And he kept a trumpet on his desk during his show.
I forgot that.
I remember. But yeah. So you were originally, when you got into college, you were after a music degree for teaching.
Yeah, music ed. I got a BS in music ed. One of the first things that happened when I attended college was we didn't have upperclassmen because the very vaunted band director from Tennessee Tech was hired away by the University of Tennessee, and most of the upperclassmen, at least the instrumentalists, moved with him to the university. So we didn't have, the upperclassmen were sophomores when I started as a freshman. But one of the trombone players was a guy named Charlie Kirkpatrick, who was brilliant, a brilliant man. He was a pretty good musician, a pretty good trombone player, but he loved Dixieland jazz. And he came up to me in the hallway early on in my freshman year and said, I'm starting a Dixieland band. Would you like to play tuba? I don't know how he found out I played tuba. But I said, well, of course I would. Why wouldn't I? And I sent you the photo of that band. That was the band that won the first annual spring talent contest that year. That's
before you were quite so good looking.
Yeah, I got better looking as I went along. Yeah,
I think so, actually.
And I was really skinny in those days. You know, I didn't look like I do now. But Charlie was really gung-ho with that music. And so that's where I started learning tunes. I started learning how to play bass lines, what to listen to, and how to emulate what was going on.
Yeah, I appreciate all the media you sent me. The purpose or the heart of this show is really conversational. I sort of wanted to make it like hanging out in a musician's lounge or over a table. What I miss the most about not playing so much is the connections with people and the friendships. I can always find a YouTube channel and listen to you play, but this kind of interaction and getting a chance to, reinforce friendships is what I was really looking for in this show in particular.
Well, the beauty of the internet is that in this time when we can't be together in person, we can still be together.
I'm sure it must drive you probably not as much as it drives me crazy, but when we were up and coming, and of course you're a couple of years older than I am, but when we were up and coming, we had to really work to get media to listen to. You had to go out and find the records and the kids. I still teach high school, or up until about 4 months ago. You would ask them to look something up on YouTube, and they have everything in the world at their fingertips now, and they aren't taking advantage of it. It kind of drives me nuts. But I'm just an old crotchety man.
Yeah, I don't. The kids would rather communicate in other ways, I guess, than to get so involved in the music aspect of it.
So, what in the world got you to Hawaii?
Uncle Sam. I finished school. It took me 5 years to get through school because I didn't want to graduate. By the time, well, when I started my sophomore year, we got a new departmental chairman. He hired some new faculty, one of whom was Pat McGuffey, who went on to play principal trumpet with the Nashville Symphony for 25 years after that. But Pat was a great trumpet player, and he wanted to start a faculty brass quintet. Well, there were only 2 brass on the faculty. So he came up to me in the hallway, brand new on campus. I was getting something out of my locker, and he came up and introduced himself, and he says, "I hear you're the trombone player." I said, "Well, I'm not quite sure what that means, but what?" And he said, "Well, I'm starting a brass quintet, and I'd like for you to play trombone." I said, "Wow, that's really cool." And he said, "Well, who would you recommend in the department to play tuba?" And I thought for a brief moment, and I said, "Well, me." And he said, "Well, okay, who would you recommend for trombone?" And I recommended my good buddy Horton Monroe, who's still my friend to this day. And lo and behold, we had a brass quintet with a faculty trumpet player, faculty French horn, and student second trumpet, trombone, and tuba. And it evolved into a full-blown faculty quintet, which is still going today. But we rehearsed, as I recall, I think we rehearsed 3 days a week, and we did wonderful things like we did a history of brass instruments or something like that for the public television affiliate in Nashville. We did a 2-hour show, and we played for MENC convention. We played for Phi Mu Alpha convention. We did a lot of stuff, and because Pat and the horn player Bob Crane were such wonderful musicians. Bob Crane was a Fulbright scholar, incredible musician. I learned so much music playing with that group. It was just amazing, and I didn't want it to go away, so I stretched my education out for an extra year. And at the end of the 5th year, I had pinned down a junior high teaching job at a local school so I could stay in town and keep playing with the quintet. And Uncle Sam says, "You're not going to do that. You're going to war." I got drafted. So I managed to forestall that long enough to enlist in the Air Force and got a letter of guarantee that I would be in a band. So I went to Langley Air Force Base in Virginia and played in the band there for 2 years. And then I got orders to go to the Philippines to be transferred for my last 2 years in the Philippines. And after my orders came in, my band director, my band commander said, "Hey, Les, how would you like to go to Hawaii instead?" And after I stopped doing cartwheels and flips and all that, I said, "Well, that sounds pretty cool." So he pulled a bunch of political strings, a lot of political strings, and got my orders changed to Hawaii. So that's how I ended up there.
I don't know if you know or not, but I'm half Filipino. My mother's Filipino.
I didn't know what the background was or the percentage, but I guessed that.
Yeah, my father's German, my mother's Filipino, so I'm a Germapino.
Germapino.
Which is funny if you like being thought of as a venereal disease, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, a lot of Filipinos in Hawaii, but one of my good friends there was a veterinarian. He was also a world-class drummer, and he moved from the Philippines, and he had a hard time getting licensed in the States for some reason, and so he played drums for a living.
Of course, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But while he was getting his credentials together to be able to practice veterinary medicine, he played drums. And
I was just going to say, Louis Armstrong is a longtime drummer. Danny Barcelona is also a Filipino.
Yeah, Danny played. I knew Danny. He I don't remember working with him. I probably did, but I remember that he played with Louis.
Right.
And he of course was friends with Trummy Young, who lived there in Hawaii at the time. So yeah, I remember Danny.
Now, did you get some jazz in while you were in Hawaii?
I'm sorry.
Did you get some jazz playing in while you were in Hawaii?
Oh, did I get some jazz playing in? It was a hotbed of jazz while I was there. While I was still in the Air Force, we had a piano player in the Air Force band named John Ferrara. We called him Little John because he was little. He introduced me to Gabe Baltazar, who had played, of course, been featured with the Kenton Band and moved back to Hawaii, became the assistant band leader of the Royal Hawaiian Band, which I'll talk about also. But Gabe was an amazing jazz player, and he hosted a jam session in his house every Saturday. So Little John introduced me to Gabe, and I'd go there and jam with Gabe and some of the local luminaries. Danny may have done that, I don't recall. But well, I won't go into the wheres and wherefores, but there was a lot of music, a lot of shows. Every local singer had a band and a couple of Samoan bodyguards, and there was an association there that I won't go into. But
well, I understand. I've had some friends who have been professionals on the island, and I understand.
Okay, so also there were a lot of musicians moving there because there was so much work, and the big stars started finding out that they could get a band there. They were in the habit of going to Japan, doing a tour, and then going back to LA or New York or wherever. Then they started stopping off in Hawaii because they could get a great band in Hawaii. And that's when Gary Grant, who's one of the world's greatest lead trumpet players,
Absolutely,
moved there. Gary was there for 3 years. Gary started a small band, a 3-horn band, and a big band, both of which I played in. Sea Wind was an incredible group. They did, I think they did 4 albums before they broke up. They did 2 for CTI and 2 for, what's the other label? Anyway, they started there. The way a lot of those guys got there was Woody Herman's band played there, and the Barry player was a guy named Dave Lewell. And he met this contractor, Harvey Ragsdale, local contractor. And Harvey said, "We've got a lot of work here. Do you have any friends that would like to move here?" So he called his friends at Indiana University, who included Jerry Hay and Larry Hall and Kim Hutchcroft and Larry Williams. And they all moved to Hawaii and started doing shows together. They formed a group, and it evolved into Sea Wind, which became a pretty much world-renowned, world-class pop band, a great band. So we had all those guys living there. We had alumni from a number of the big bands. I remember several people from Kenton Big Band, Glenn Miller. So we had a lot of great players, and people wanted outlets besides just playing shows at night, and so a lot of bands were formed. A lot of music going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, Trummy Young was living there. Trummy, when I moved there, he was working at the Hilton Hawaiian Village, and the room that they were in was built of straw, and it burned down one night. It was an amazing sight. And so he moved to the Sheraton Waikiki, which had a room at the top called the Hanohana Room, and he was there for many years. But Ira Nepos was living there, okay. And Ira and I got really close to Trummy, and we would hang out with him and go to his apartment. We'd practice together, and he'd tell us Louis stories and just hobnob. And Trummy had the opportunity through a local producer who owned a recording studio there to do his first album as a leader. And so they decided between the two of them to make it a trombone album, more or less. So he had a section of 4 trombones, which Ira and I joined. And my teacher was Dick Robley for my master's, when I got my master's at UH. Dick Robley was my teacher, and he was the other trombone player besides Trummy. And Gary Grant played on it. We had a woodwind player named Bob Wynn and a few other people, but it's mostly about the trombones. And the album hasn't been re-released. I don't know why. I can probably find a copy and send it to you. I think I have it on CD somewhere.
I would love anything that you're on. I've been such a fan since we met.
I appreciate that so much.
You got a wonderful voice. Have you ever done any voiceover or radio show type of thing?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you have a great voice. I'm sure you've been told that.
I've never been told that.
Oh, well, you've got a wonderful speaking voice. I'm wondering how mad I have to get you before I really hear the Tennessee come out, though.
Oh, well, probably after I talk to my sister who still lives in Tennessee, it would come out.
And there's a little bit in there, but I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, I
So,
kind of mostly disappeared after living in Hawaii for as long as I did. I was in Hawaii from 69 to 77.
so you came out speaking full pidgin.
Well, I try to avoid that because the locals look down on you because you don't really know how to do it. But you should hear my wife. My wife has a wonderful voice, a wonderful speaking voice, and she's great on the telephone. But when she talks to her cousins back home, the pidgin creeps back in. You can hear it happening.
It's kind of like my Filipino mother, of course. She's passed now, but yeah, it comes on full bore, when she starts talking to relatives and things.
Well,
So,
you can't help.
oh yeah, obviously. So what got you back to the mainland?
The main impetus was my dad had been ill. My parents lived near Nashville, about 60 miles or so from Nashville. They had moved in retirement, and I wanted to be close to my dad. So I asked my wife, Haiti, if actually I went back there for a couple of weeks to visit my parents, and I ended up working in Nashville. There was a theme park there called Opryland.
Sure.
And one of my friends that had heard me play with the Air Force Band, gosh, way back in the day, met me because the band leader of the show that he was doing was one of my college classmates and an Air Force buddy. And so he met me and he said, I'm going on vacation for a week or 2 weeks or something. He said, would you sub for me on this band? And so I did, and I went back home to Hawaii, and I said, gee, there's a lot of work there in Nashville, and the work in Hawaii's kind of dying off, and my dad's sick. We could go be close to him. How would you feel about moving to from Hawaii to Nashville? And she said, okay. So we had 3 little girls, and we just packed up and moved. So
Wow.
we were there for 2 years in Nashville, and there was a lot of music going on. There was a wonderful big band called the Nashville Jazz Machine, which just had a big reunion concert last August. And I got into a small group right away. My friend, my Air Force / college buddy, took me to hear a group that was a quartet, tenor and rhythm, quintet with piano, bass, drums, guitar, and tenor. And took me to hear them, introduced me to the guys, and told them I was a trombone player. And they said, well, next time we're playing somewhere, bring your horn. Okay, so I found out where they were playing next in a week or 2 and took my horn, and they said, come up and play. So they said, what would you like to play? And I said, well, I'd been learning Spain, playing along with Chick Corea's album, which was a wonderful album. And I said, well, do you guys know Spain? They said, yeah, we do that. So we did Spain. And they said, well, come out the next time we're playing somewhere. So I ended up becoming a member of that group, and we worked all the time the 2 years I was there.
That move must have been quite an interesting culture shock for the family.
It wasn't so bad in Nashville, but we took the girls to Disney World, and the further south we got, the more of a culture shock it became. People didn't know what to make of these Hawaiian girls. They didn't know what they were. So yeah, that was a little strange.
Of course, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Everybody in Nashville embraced them, and it was generally a good experience.
I only mention that because, of course, my mom and dad met during World War II, mm-hmm. and my mother went from being in the middle of Manila to Omaha, Nebraska, in 1 move. So
that's a big jump.
Yeah, that was a bit of a culture shock for mom.
Sure. Well, Nashville was starting to become more culturally diverse at the time, more cosmopolitan, and so I think it wasn't as big a shock as it might have been a few years before. But they were starting to get a sushi restaurant or Japanese restaurant here and there, Chinese restaurant, and so people were used to seeing people that weren't quite like them, and yeah, it wasn't really so bad. She was home a lot with the kids because they were little, I'd take our oldest girl, who was she was starting 4th grade when we moved. I'd take her to the movies and stuff, and Haiti would stay home with the twins, who were only babies. They were a year and a half or 2 years old when we moved.
Sure. What got you into the Jack Daniels band? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm trying to remember exactly what the sequence of events was. Somebody called me and said that there was a band starting up and they needed a euphonium player or a baritone horn player.
Sure.
And I said, well, who's the contractor? And they told me who it was. And so I got his number and I called and I left a voicemail for him. I said, I hear you're looking for a euphonium player. And I said, I are one and I own one. And here's my number. Well, he called me back and asked me to come down and play with the band. I guess they were auditioning. And that was it. That was the job. And I did that for 5 years. That was 1977. That was the first year we were in Nashville. We toured for, we did 2 tours a year of 6 weeks each. And then we did a Christmas tour for a month. So we were on the road for 4 months out of the year. So I'm sure that was hard on Haiti, leaving her alone with the girls. But
were you with the band when they did the Sun Valley, Idaho festival?
No.
Just because that's my first time I saw them live.
Uh-huh.
And just a quick story, if you don't mind. George Probert was playing with us at the time in the band. And, Bird Bar used to put together these giant marching bands out of people in the Dixieland Festival. And so all the people from Jack Daniels came down and played it. And 2 women who were playing alto horns stood right in front of George. And he had brought his E-flat sopranino.
Uh-oh.
And the minute he started playing, they picked up their stands and they moved to the other side of the band. It was really hilarious. Anyway, that's why I asked.
Of course they did.
Well, that must have been, was that a fun band? I don't even know what that would have been like to play. And it was so scripted.
Yeah, it was a great band. It's all the show is all on YouTube. You can look it up.
Yeah.
We did a live concert at the Nashville Performing Arts Center, and it was recorded. So that's all on YouTube. And there's some videos also on YouTube.
Yeah, you folks watching that may not know the band, you need to look that up. It's wildly entertaining and unbelievably great musicians.
Mm-hmm. The founder of the band was a really interesting guy, also with Hawaii roots. He was the professor. He's the guy that ran the band. But he lived in Hawaii. He played trombone in the Honolulu Symphony, and he was in the Honolulu Theater Group. He moved to LA and he became a producer of a show called You Asked For It.
Sure.
Okay, he did that. And then he became an advertising consultant. And he was working on an ad thing for Jack Daniels, and he ran across an article in an old Lynchburg, Tennessee newspaper, something about the Lynchburg Silver Cornet Band is going to play for the July 4th parade or something like that. And he grabbed that article and went to the honchos at Jack Daniels and said, look, you guys can go into the entertainment business. It'll be great advertising. And so they let him start the band. They put a band together of LA guys, and they did a couple of concerts, and they did a recording. And the story, people liked it. So they said, let's do it. Let's take it on the road. So they formed the band then from Nashville people. And rest is history. It was a great band, a great show. He wrote all the script himself. It was down home, just homey Tennessee, Jack Daniels, Lynchburg, Tennessee stuff, but it was really cool.
Well, we both have alcoholic roots here. I mean, in the fact that I played for Southern Comfort for a year.
Of course, there you go. It's a good background.
There you go.
One of the bits that Dave Fulmer, he wrote everything for the show except this one bit. It was a thing about a vacuum cleaner that he wrote for, I think it was the 1936 World's Fair or something, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, I had always assumed that the gentleman playing the professor was an actor, but
well, he had been an actor, Honolulu Theater Group, whatever. But yeah, he wrote the whole show, and because he was a musician, he he knew how to run a band, and he got really good music out of us.
Now, did you go from that experience to LA, or was there some more stuff in between?
No, I was there for 2 years, and I uh, I did an album. I did a lot of recording while I was there, and I didn't realize how much until I got to LA and I got my special payments check from my time in Nashville, and it was.
So you were still in Nashville when you recorded with Elvis?
No, that was in Hawaii.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the show's called Aloha from Hawaii, and it is supposedly the most watched television special in history. It was simultaneously a live concert and a live recording for RCA and a satellite live television broadcast.
I remember that show.
That was 1972, and I'm still getting royalty checks from that.
Yeah. For those of you who may not be familiar with Les's work, I'm sure you've heard him. Through the groups he's recorded with and appeared with, Elvis Presley, Claire Fisher, Julio Iglesias, Bette Midler. Who else is in the? Andy Griffith, Charlie Daniels, Lauren Green, Tony Tennille, Ray Anthony, Crummy Young, of course, Matt Kattengub, and Roger Newman, among others. You seem to have a really small niche. No, I'm kidding. That's about as wide of a variety of artists as you could record for. Not to mention your symphonic work.
Yeah. I've never tried to specialize on one instrument or one musical niche, and I don't know where that got me or didn't get me, but like I said, it's been a good ride. I got a call from.
Go ahead.
I got a call from Harry Kim, and he said he was doing a recording with Joe Zawinul of Weather Report fame.
I love that name because I couldn't pronounce it.
So Joe wanted 3 horns. He wanted a trumpet, he wanted a sax, and he wanted somebody to play a multitude of brass instruments because he wanted to do multiple overdubs so that he could fool with textures. And so I loaded up everything I owned in my old Buick and drove to Malibu, and we recorded with Joe Zawinul for 2 days, 3 days. It was really cool. Joe was an amazing person. And I played, let's see, I'll tell you the instruments I played on that, starting with E-flat alto horn, alto trombone, small tenor trombone, symphonic tenor trombone, bass trombone, euphonium, and tuba. And Joe wanted me to play bass trumpet because he owned one, but I couldn't use it because we couldn't get the slides to move, so we couldn't get it in tune. Yeah. That was one of my, I guess the one session or group of sessions I did where I played the most bizarre kind of setup of instruments. Well, there was one other, when Claire Fisher heard a drum and bugle corps, he fell in love with the sound. So he went out and bought thousands of dollars worth of bugles and then set about finding people to play them. And his contractor, Morris Repass, called me one day and said, Claire needs somebody to play the contrabass bugle, and either nobody can or nobody wants to, or whatever. Are you interested in giving it a shot? I said, yeah, sure. So we showed up at Claire's house, and I met Claire, and we hung out in his living room for a bit, and then they went and dragged that big beast out, and I plopped it up on my shoulder, and I fooled around till I figured out where Do was, because they're in G, you've played. And so I started playing this song of Claire's that he had composed and recorded with the high-lows. And Claire got this enormous grin on his face. And so I became his contrabass bugler.
Yeah, my son is the director of the Impulse Drum and Bugle Corps here in Southern California.
Oh, really?
And I was telling him today, as you know, he's kind of producing the show for me. I was telling him that you're the only person I know who's done a professional recording on G Bugle. And he smiled ear to ear. Claire actually called me looking for a recommendation for a mellophone player.
Oh.
At the time. And I sent him some, but I don't think they ended up hooking up. But
yeah, those mellophone bugles are the weird instruments. I'll tell you another story about that. Now, I ended up not recording on contrabass bugle because by the time he got around to recording, he had a rehearsal or a jazz festival or something where I was going to be out of town. So I recommended Rod Matthews to play the contra because he had played in high school. And so he became the contrabass player, and I became, on the album, E-flat Helicon, E-flat alto flugelhorn, and E-flat cornet. Those were my three instruments on the recording.
Well, God bless you. E-flats, it's such a wonderful key for brass instruments.
Yes, it is. It is for me. I love it. I played E-flat alto horn on the soundtrack of Glory.
I'm going to talk about that too, because that's kind of what I was implying at the beginning of our interview, that you play music that way predates Dixieland in classic jazz.
Yeah, that's true. I co-founded a band with Steve Sharpey that we ended up calling it the California Gold Rush Band. And it was started after I had done a jazz festival at Columbia College, Columbia, California, the heart of Gold Rush country near Jamestown and Sonora. And they have a restored Gold Rush era town there and a museum. And I noticed a cornet on the wall in the museum. So I found one of the park rangers and asked if there was a band there. Did they have any history of music? And they said, oh, yes. Let me call one of the other rangers and she can tell you all about it. So she pulled out a scrapbook that had photos of all the Columbia bands starting, I think Columbia was founded in 1851 and they had a band by 1852, a brass band. And they had quite a history. And so I went back to Disneyland and got Sharpie and I said, let's start a band based on this California band. And so we ended up doing that. And we played a lot of festivals, brass band festivals, the Great American Brass Band Festival several times. We played in museums and college concerts. And we did several recordings, two of which were for Ken Burns, one for his baseball series and one for his bicycle series. And we did an album of a CD of 1860s and 70s cavalry music for a private individual who wanted to have horse music to give to his equestrian friends. So wow. that was pretty fun, pretty cool. We got a lot of music from the Smithsonian and the Library of Congress and adapted it. There wasn't any extant brass band music that we could get our hands on, but we did our own arrangements, our own realizations from keyboard music and whatever. So
that band's appeared in a few films, haven't they? Or TV shows and things?
The baseball and
Glory?
Well, that was a different band. That was a pickup band. No.
Oh, okay.
The story with that was James Horner wanted a brass band for one of his scenes in Glory, and somebody told him about the Americas brass band in Long Beach. And so he hired them. They came in and did the recording, and then he's going to put the recording with an 80-piece orchestra and a 100-voice chorus. Finds out that those instruments are played in high pitch. And that was before Pro Tools and everything, so they couldn't bring the pitch down. So they put out an emergency call and hired an emergency band to go in the next day and re-record everything. And interestingly, Lauren Marsteller was on both because he's a member of the Americas band.
Yeah, not a bad player. He's not really a hack in my book either.
He's definitely not a hack.
You know, some of the best euphonium players are people that aren't really, well, more, of course, he's one of the best in the country. But, you know, Westy Wessenhofer, of course, was a brilliant euphonium player that a lot of people don't know.
You know? We were, you know, I'll tell you, first of all, one of the saddest days in my life was I started with the Disneyland band full time in 1982. And Westy was still in the band, and Ray Templin was in the band. And I never spent a day without laughing until my gut hurt with the repartee between those two. And when Westy announced he was leaving the band, I think it was one of the saddest days of my life. Oh my. I really missed the band. But we were playing with the California Gold Rush Band, the Great American Brass Band Festival, when we were setting up to do an outdoor concert. And out of the corner of my eye, I see this person walking in from the side. And I thought, my God, it's Westy. What's he doing here? And I looked up and it looked like Westy, but it wasn't. This guy came up like, what are you guys staring at? I said, well, you look really like our friend Lee Westenhofer. He said, "Oh, I was Westy's college euphonium instructor."
Wow.
Wow.
Well, his dad was a renowned euphonium player as well. Westy's dad.
I didn't know that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Westy was a remarkable musician.
Oh, absolutely. So Disneyland and stories. Westy tells me about the trophy he made for Eddie Erickson.
Mhm.
That whole story about the cheese sandwich and.
I don't remember that one.
Oh, golly. Westy said when Eddie retired, Slow Eddie, the Eddie from the trumpet player, that the only thing he used to eat for lunch was a cheese sandwich with American cheese and 2 slices of bread. So when he went to retire, Westy made him a trophy out of plexiglass and some plastic things, and that was a sandwich. And on the bottom of it, he had plastered a picture of Eddie coming out of the shower at Disneyland. On the very bottom, and which Eddie didn't know, and evidently he took it home and he was showing, and he showed Bunny. He put it up on his fireplace, and they left it there, and everybody had a good laugh about it until Eddie's sister came over and picked up and goes, "Oh, what's this?" and turned it over. I love that story.
I missed that one. Yeah, Disneyland Band was a hotbed of practical jokes.
Well, I also heard about Steve Sharpie and his disdain for fingernail clippers. That was another one.
He couldn't stand fingernail clippers. Yeah, he would beg people to stop clipping their nails, and we'd wait until he was occupied doing something, and we'd start snipping away, and he'd prove them up.
So how long were you at the park?
I was there from 82 to 93, 11 years or so.
I didn't realize you were there for that amount of time.
Yeah.
We were talking on that tuba group about the tuba players that came through the park. Why don't you name a few of them for us here? I mean, we talked about you and Westy and Randy Englund, I think.
Yeah, Randy.
And
I took Randy's place. Randy left, and I came in. Bob Burstein, of course.
Bob Burstein.
Bob Burstein in air, as we say.
Charlie Warren.
Charlie Warren
was there with the jazz guys.
Yeah, you caught me now when I started.
That's okay. I was just going to lead up to the fact I was going to say thank goodness for Dixie and employing musicians.
Who just his wife's the secretary of the Musicians Union, and my mind just went blank. Had just celebrated 35 years there. John Noreko.
Okay.
Has been there 35 years.
Wow.
That's a pretty long career.
I know. He always appears in my head as one of the young guys, of course, because we're so old.
Yeah, when we were there, they were young. Stan Freese, of course. And Stan's pretty much a world-renowned tuba player. He was on Hee Haw so many times. And
yeah, when last I saw Stan, it was at Westy's Memorial. So.
Oh yeah, and Stan's still going. Stan and Art Dragon and I. Well, of course, Art played tuba also. Stan and Art and I are all the same age. We have birthdays within a couple of months.
Do you have one of your sousaphones on Stan Freese's tree in front of his house?
No, I don't. I've never owned a sousaphone, but that could change. I did buy I recently bought a Besson bell front compensating double B flat tuba, and that would fit somewhere.
I'm thinking, how big of a bell is that?
My bell's 24 inches, but they made them up to 30, I think.
Yeah, those old Martins and some of those horns just had enormous bells on them.
Yeah, the bell, it looks really bigger than it is because, of course, the bell's out in front of the player, so it's closer to the camera. But it's pretty huge. I don't have it playing yet. It needs a really good bath, and then it needs new valve pads and an alignment and all that. But it still plays. It's a really interesting horn. Compensating 3-valve.
Wow.
I found it on eBay. Chris Tedesco called me and he said, I'm going to start a 1920s, Roaring 20s band, and I need a bell front tuba. If you want to play, you got to get a bell front tuba. And I said, well, I have a helicopter. Said, no, that goes out to the side. That doesn't go to the front. You need a bell front tuba or a sousaphone. So I got on eBay and I found this old tuba and had it shipped down from a music store in North Dakota. So
it's surprising how much of the look I mean, I got a lot of grief when I was playing my Miraphone on the Dixieland circuit,
Hmm.
but what can you say?
Well, that's why I play my Helicon on most things. It looks more authentic, even though it way predates Dixieland. And my
Yeah.
Helicon was made about 1860, according to Rob Stewart.
Yeah, I play mostly my my Con and my King sousaphones anymore, but what can you say?
Well, yeah, you play what works.
So,
I've been playing some symphony stuff, and one of the things I did was Prokofiev Fifth Symphony with Bakersfield, and of course that's a tuba symphony. There's so much tuba in that. Some of the players call it the tuba solo or whatever. But I played it on my Besson E flat compensator, and I played it. It was a lot of work, and I thought, I really should have a C tuba because I hadn't played C tuba in 20 years. So I ended up buying a Canstel after they went out of business. So I've got a really nice 4/4 Canstel double C.
yeah, I had a chance. If I had the money, I would have bought one of those the York 5/4 copies. Because what great horns! Flip and I talked, of course, and how devastated we were when Cancel decided. Well, they didn't decide to, but when they closed down, and I used to march next to both of the Cancel brothers, both Jack and Ziggy.
Wow!
I marched between them when I was with the Velvet Knights Drum Corps in the '70s.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So I was so surprised that neither one of them wanted to take over the business, or Mark. The three of them.
Well, they had money problems after Zig died, and I think that's why they eventually went under. Jack didn't want to run the business. He moved back to Phoenix, I think. And so they were bought out, and hopefully all of those tools and all of that tooling will get some good use and make some good instruments down the line.
Yeah, BAC bought it all. Flip was saying that they had 7 semis or 6 semis that came out and picked it up.
But they nailed Charles Hargett also. So Charles is running that side of the business. So at least he's bringing Cancel's thinking along with him.
Well, Charles actually was a member of the board of directors of Impulse Drum and Bugle Corps. A lot of those guys. Troy, of course, was one of the founders of all that stuff. And my connections, I met Zig when he was still at Effie Olds, and making bugles then. So what can I say?
I took an E flat alto horn, not alto horn, a mellophone that I had acquired. Somebody had put the wrong tuning slide in the second valve. It had a third valve slide. And it was too long, and it had a couple of dings, and it was in really good shape in general. But I took it down to Zig and I asked him if he could cut that slide, and so it was the correct length. And he took that mellophone, he put it on his desk, and he admired it for about 2 or 3 minutes. And he said, whoever built this really knew what they were doing. This is a really good horn. And I said, well, that's great to know. I said, if you just take care of it, and I would really appreciate it. He said, yeah, I'll get it fixed up for you. So I went out and talked to Charles for 10 or 15 minutes, and I went back in Ziggy's office, and I said, just give me a call when you get done with that horn, and I'll come and pick it up. He said, oh, it's done. Had it all finished. It's beautiful. It's an interesting horn because it has, in addition to the piston valves, it has 2 rotary valves to change the key of the instrument. So you can have mellophone in C, D, E flat, or F.
Wow.
Turning rotary valves.
That I had no idea. At one time, Zig always liked to experiment with horns and horn designs. And one day, Tori showed up in my house with a bell front E flat alto. I went, it's fine, but who's going to play it? I mean, who was this built for? The English bands don't use bell fronts, and the drum corps don't use E flat. So I don't exactly sure who he designed this for.
I wonder if maybe for marching bands. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. But the E flat books for marching bands, of course, went away a long time ago. They use F mellophones now, or E flat mellophones a lot. And as you know, I ended up being more of a marching band teacher and drum bugle corps guy between my gigs. So.
Oh, I just thought of something that I was going to relate to you earlier. And yes, I did play G Contra on a recording. It was a Claire Fisher recording. After we did what Claire called the jazz core recording, we were doing some jazz festivals or jazz concerts, and he wrote a few extra charts that didn't get on the recording. And he did one on four brothers, which he always wanted to record, but didn't have a venue for it. So we did a recording. He had this group called Clarinet Choir. It was 8 woodwinds, mostly clarinets, but all the guys doubled on other instruments, and 1 trumpet, 1 trombone, and piano, bass, and drums. So we did 1 album, and then he decided he wanted to do a second album. He wrote more things, and he wanted to record that with the Clarinet Choir. But he still had this thing in his mind. He wanted to record 4 brothers that he'd written for the bugle band, the jazz corps.
Sure.
So we recorded all of the clarinet stuff, and then those guys split, and they Claire and Brent had brought in all of the bugles to the studio, and Steve Hustetter and I played all 20 brass instruments.
Oh my.
We overdubbed all of that stuff. So that's on YouTube also. You can look that up.
Oh, I definitely have to look that one up. That's good. You know, it's funny, every so often a composer will hear that G bugle sound, which is, you know, really identifiable, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it bit Stan Kenton, and it bit Claire Fisher, and every so often, you know, somebody will recognize that, how warm of a sound that is, and record with it.
Yeah, it's a terrific sound. Warm, big and warm. Yeah, it sure is.
Although Kenton never used G, he did use those awful bell front E flat alto. Though those were olds, no, they were Cons. The mellophones that Kenton used.
King made some and Con made some. Con made the better ones. The King ones evidently were not all that good.
Yeah,
I had one. I had a Con bell front mellophone for a while, and I sold it to a friend.
He's still a friend? No, most brass guys can't hear an E flat, and I'm one of them. I can never get it. I can never get my head to play it in tune.
Well, if you're coming from the trombone side, as soon as you start reading, it's like reading tenor clef on the trombone, and so it makes it easier to get the change of pitch in your head.
Yeah, well, because of drum corps, I've always had pretty good movable dough, but E flat's just always been a turd for me.
Yeah, just takes practice and time, I guess. I don't know. I've never been chicken as far as trying something new.
That I understand.
Always wanted to try something new. So I got an alto horn early on and played it on some gigs in Hawaii.
Wow. Yeah, you were going to talk about the Royal Hawaiian Band.
Royal Hawaiian Band was founded in 1836 by the King. It became a full-time job in 1841 and has been a full-time job to this day. It is I forget what the complement is, 36 people, I think. It's a city civil service band. And so the band members are all city employees. So they have a health plan and pension and everything that would go with a job like that. They recently got a promotion, so they got a pay raise. They got bumped up one government service rating, and so they got a raise. The band was going strong. When I was in Hawaii, Gabe Baltasar was the assistant band leader.
They're still going strong.
Still going strong. They do, 350 services a year or something like that. It's pretty amazing. When Gabe was there, he started a jazz band, and that's where I got involved with the band, was playing with Gabe's band. And we do park concerts with them and so forth. But to this day, I'll go over and on vacation, and I'll take my whites and my aloha shirt. Well, they have aloha shirts and white shoes, and go in the band for a day. Yeah,
I've had the chance to go over. They now have, you probably know, but they now have an international marching band or a high school band competition there every year. And I've been over there 4 times with different high school bands. And I always get a chance to catch that band when I'm over there, usually over at that big shopping center. Honolulu.
Ala Moana Shopping Center.
Right, and they have that really nice stage in the middle of the shopping center.
Yeah.
And that's where I normally see them.
Well, the other cool place to catch them is on Sunday. It's 11 a.m. or noon, I forget. They have a bandstand.
The gazebo in the park, sure.
The park across from the zoo. So that's a really cool place to catch them also.
In fact, that's where they have the concert band competitions for that same event.
Oh, cool.
It's a nice venue.
It's a nice venue, and they recently overhauled it. They had a rehab within the last couple of years, so it's even nicer than it was before.
Yeah, and of course, when I get over there, I try to see Society of Seven and all those shows.
Yeah.
Those guys are way talented too, obviously.
They've been there for about 400 years, I think.
Yeah, of course, that didn't Bruno Mars get a start with those kind of acts?
I don't know that for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
I believe that he was related to the Society of Seven guys or something.
I played with them on occasion. They had these, what were those horns called? Tromboniums. That I don't know if King made them or Khan made them. They were kind of like alto horns, but skinnier and taller.
Okay.
Maybe bell, not front, but angled toward the front. Tromboniums. I think J.J. Johnston and Kai Winding used them on one of their recordings. And they had two of those, and so they brought me in to play with them, I don't know, once or twice.
Well, that's crazy.
Fun.
Yeah, they've had a gig forever.
They were there when I was living there, 60s, 70s, still going.
So what is it? Say that all of our current lockdowns disappear within the next few months. What's coming up for you?
Well, what's being canceled is, of course, my Sunday night jazz gig.
And my Friday's gone too.
I'll look forward to that coming back if the bar survives. Symphonies, Bakersfield Symphony, I've been doing some work with them. Antelope Valley Symphony, Thousand Oaks Philharmonic, the New Valley, it's the San Fernando Valley Symphony, I guess, if they come back. I was playing principal trombone with them. Bakersfield was interesting because I got that referral through June Satin. She got called and for a concert and she couldn't do it, and she referred me, and I went up and I played Petrushka. I played principal trombone on Petrushka, which I knew but had never had the opportunity to play. So that was a workout for me and was really great fun. And then that was in a spring concert, and then the following fall, the contractor called and asked me if I could play tuba on the Prokofiev Fifth Symphony.
Oh my!
I said, "Well, gee, Mary, how did you find out that I played tuba?" She said, "Well, you mentioned it to somebody backstage at the last concert." So, boy, that's quite a referral. I'll take it.
Well, that's not exactly a symphony you step into lightly.
It's a really good symphony.
Yeah.
I mean, the orchestra is really good, and they have a really good conductor. He's a young guy, a young Russian guy, I think, from Eastman, and he's quite good with the orchestra and quite congenial, so he's easy to work with. Let's see what else. I've been volunteering as euphoniumist with the LAPD band.
Okay.
And, we've got 2 videos now that Richard Allen put together. We all videotaped ourselves and sent it in from home. And one's Stars and Stripes Forever, and the other one is it's a vocal on what's the song? I Love the USA or something.
Yeah, that band's also been around a very long time.
Well, those videos are viewable on the LAPD band website, which is lasown.com, lasown.com. He just sent out tracks for another one now. It's a dance band thing, but he augmented it by adding concert band instruments so we can do it with either group. And so my next project is to get that on video and get it to Richard. Also a band leader. I play with a band called the Windy City Blues Band, and I play trombone and tuba with them. I'm the only horn player. And the leader asked me, Sheila Ellis asked me if I would record. She wanted everybody in the band to record a solo that they're going to pay us to do and put it on their website. So I'm pretty much decided on what I'm going to do on trombone and send it to her, but I'm kind of several weeks in arrears on doing that. So
Yeah.
that's my agenda coming up.
If anybody says they're going to pay me, I'll do just about anything. It does,
Yeah, especially right now.
Well, I was talking to a few of the people on this show that I've interviewed, and I don't think a lot of the trad jazz fans understand that as a professional, the idea of your job is to get paid and put money in your pocket and put food on the table. So, none of us that are serious about doing this for a living are really picky about what style we're being asked to play. We'll play whatever we play as well as we can, and with proper intent.
Exactly, and that's why we all become so versatile, because we have to. It's a matter of necessity. It's rare that anyone can pick one genre and stay with it. If you get a symphony job, then that's one thing. But even the symphony guys get bored with that, and they want to stretch out and they want to expand their horizons.
Well, as you know, and I tell all my tuba students this. By the way, I've tried to send you several trombone students, as you know, and I don't think any of them have followed through, and I kind of apologize for that, but what can you do? But what I was going to say is I always tell them good examples of people that are really dedicated and making it as professionals are people who put in lots of time practicing. It doesn't come as easy as it looks for anybody. And you're a good example of that. I mean, the first time I heard you warm up and you're reading those 4-octave lip slurs, I was like, I hit the floor.
I always tell my students that one of your primary goals is to make it look easy. And the way that you accomplish that is by coming as accomplished as you can. I was talking to one of my former students that I taught in Hawaii. You probably know the name, Conrad Herwig. Conrad,
I don't know the gentleman, but yeah, I know the name.
Yeah, he's one of the world's great trombonists. He just finished his 25th album as a leader, and he's played with everybody in the jazz world. But he studied trombone in Hawaii with me from when he was in 8th grade through high school. And he just told me the last phone conversation we had a week or so ago, he's told me that he had one lesson scheduled with me that I had to bail on because I had a job or something. So I sent him to Ira Nebus. And so he met Ira at a practice room at the University of Hawaii. And he went in and Ira was playing the Bach cello suites. And Conrad says, gee, Ira, I thought you were a jazzer. And Conrad says, you got to be able to play everything. And that's pretty much the truth. That's how
absolutely. When the light goes on in the studio, you've got to be able to make it happen then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
Les, this has been wonderful. And unfortunately, I need to call our interview to a close. I would go on for hours and hours and hours with you, and without ever being bored. But between my time constraints and my bladder, no, just
of course, bladders are important.
But I hope we get to be on stage again soon.
I hope so too.
Later.
I hope so too. I would really look forward to that. It's been great talking to you and catching up, and I hope we can do it. We don't have to do it for public display or anything. Let's just stay caught up, stay in touch. Anytime
I'm available. I'm yours to talk to. I cherish our friendship.
I do too. Thank you, Dan.
All right, sir.
Thank your son for his involvement in his production and his staying in touch and making all of this happen.
I appreciate that. I'll let him know.
I'll look forward to meeting him.
Thank you. Take care.
You too, Dan.
Thank you all for watching Trad Jazz Today with Dan Zeilinger. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Videos come out every Wednesday and Friday.